I was really thrilled with our Christmas collection that we were able, thanks to your generosity, to give £1,000 to Medair UK. And we've invited Matt to come along. Matt works for Medair UK, and just to share a little bit about the impact that that money will have and the work that they do, and then so that we can pray for Matt and Medair UK as they go forward. So, Matt.
So, as Paul said, I work for Medair UK. We are a Christian humanitarian. Yeah, let's try the clicker. Yeah, we're a Christian humanitarian organisation that responds to conflict, disease, disaster, so that the world's most vulnerable and hard-to-reach people can live with dignity and hope. So I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are, just what the money. Thank you so much for the money. And I'll give you an idea what it's going to go towards, and then a bit of so what. So who remembers Heineken adverts? Do you remember the Heineken advert? Heineken refreshes the parts of it. See, I think that's a really good description of Medair. We're a mid-sized humanitarian NGO. We have the worst name of any charity in the history of naming charities. We don't have any planes. I've been in conversations with church leaders and realised that an hour into the conversation, they still think we're MAF. I'm like, and then we go, okay, let's redo that whole conversation and remove that filter. We don't have planes. We were started by a few other charities, and a couple of those people were from MAF, which is probably why we've got such a stupid name. Interestingly, when I was here a couple of years ago, we talked about World Vision and the work in Uganda, and you guys are supporting that. That's where that's where Medair started about 40 years ago, in the middle of that crisis with the war and the 20 years of civil war. That's where Medair began. And the thing about humanitarian work is it's always life-saving. It's always at the beginning of the problem. It's always the desperate need. So it was quite nice for me to bring into Medair and go, well, actually, I've been there 40 years on, and this is what it looks like now. You don't get to see the end of the story in humanitarianism. You don't get to see the development side of it. So that's pretty cool. So what we specialise in, why are we like Heineken? So we're a mid-sized NGO, and what we specialise in is going to the hardest to reach people. So the larger NGOs are able to come with food and non-food items and medicine, and cater for 80% of the people in emergency situations or in disasters or things like that. What Medair do is we get the map out and we say, where are the other 20%? Where are the people who aren't being catered for here? So you will hear ridiculous stories. This image here is actually from South Sudan, where the team they did a 17-hour canoe ride to get to a village that was completely cut off and isolated because of the civil war. 17 hours. It couldn't fly in. If they flew in, the government forces would start to shoot at them. So they had to go in under the radar. It was a high risk because if they got found, they would be easy targets. But it meant, and that's what they did. And you hear stories of, there'll be an image later on of delivering a solar fridge to a village in the DRC, so that medicine could be stored there. But it was deemed unreachable. It was an 8-hour walk if you weren't carrying a fridge through the jungle. And so they took a fridge there. And so in a recent earthquake in Afghanistan, our teams drove for a day and then hiked for 2 days into the mountains to get to the villages that hadn't been reached in the disaster. So that's why we like Heineken. If you remember nothing else, remember that. So this is the image of the DRC here. So another NGO said of Medair, when the road stops, Medair keeps going. I think that's a great description of what we are. And this is just a quick map of all the countries that we work in. Currently 11. We had to leave Yemen last year because of funding cuts, which was heartbreaking. And currently in Afghanistan, all the USAID funding was cut completely to any work that anyone did in Afghanistan. So we had to halve the work that we were doing there. But our team is still doing an amazing job out there. since starting 38 years ago, I think it is, we've worked alongside saving the lives of people, and we've helped 53 million people in that time in 44 different countries. And currently, 7 of the 10 Medair is working in 7 of the 10 countries that are the highest risk levels in the world. There's an index for it, and of the 10 highest risks, we work in 7 of them. So what are we using your money for? Well, we had our impact report for last year was published last week, actually. So this just gives you a few snapshots. 407,000 vaccinated people in South Sudan were vaccinated against cholera. In South Sudan, we haven't done so badly out of the aid cuts as other organizations, because the US government said they would continue to support life-saving work. We had an agreed contract with them for South Sudan, but it wasn't signed when the regime changed. And so it was $10 million that we lost there. And we've had to cut back the work we've done. And yet still, that's how many people, 400,000 people were vaccinated last year. In Afghanistan, as I said, all the aid was cut, but 97,000 people given hygiene training, 54,000 given hygiene supplies, and 9,600 remote villages have safe water that didn't have before. All of those things need to work together, otherwise there's no point having the training if you haven't got clean water. And then in the DR Congo, 7,700 treated with severe or acute malnutrition. So these are just a few of the highlights. I mean, there's stories, there's figures for all of them. And I've got, there's a QR code you can scan on that desk there for our impact report to have a look at it yourself. But, you know, it comes back to, you know, does it feel like a drop in the ocean? Does it feel like it's worth doing? And you've seen this graph before. Does humanitarian aid make any difference? Well, that's, since Live Aid, we take Live Aid, 40% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty, under the equivalent of $2 a day. And by the beginning of COVID, that was down to 7.5%. That line goes back to 1820. It's gone for 200 years until COVID. We were on schedule to be eliminating extreme poverty in the next 10 or 15 years. And yet, what happened in COVID was it started to go up for the first time in 200 years. Even through the wars, the trend continued down. Since all of the aid cuts, since all of the changes, who knows? Who knows where that's going to go? We could go back 40 years. But the thing is, it was working. It really was working. We really were making a difference. And so, you know, we're in this situation now. We're in this situation where it looks bleak. The Lancet published an article in the summer saying they reckon that over the last 20 years, US aid has saved 93 million lives. And that the changes that have happened in the last year will cost 14 million lives in the next 5 years. 14 million lives that would have otherwise been saved. Currently, 239 million people will be in need this year. 1 in 2 children in the DRC suffer malnutrition. Every 5 seconds, a child is killed, injured, or displaced in the Middle East and North Africa, and 14 million will die. So it looks really bleak. But I tell you, we were talking when we were praying before, we have seen incredible generosity this year. In Medair UK, we're just part of the bigger organisation than Medair. In Medair UK, we almost doubled our income this last year because people stepped up. And it was, you know, I found myself being close to tears repeatedly. And I would say, you know, thank you so much for your generosity. You know, it feels like, yeah, you think, oh, it's a drop in the ocean. But you know what? I keep saying the ocean's made of drops. Let me give you an example here, right? Oh no, we're going the wrong way now, aren't we? There we go. Oh, the ocean's made of drops. So this here, this is F100 therapeutic milk. See, it says so on the tin. So a child who has acute severe malnutrition is so malnourished that they cannot actually eat normal food. And so they have to have this stuff to get them to the place where they will then be able to eat normal food. This stuff will literally save the life of a child. It costs less than £5. So for £5, you can save the life of a child. The ocean's made of drops. We are here for just such a time as this, where our little drops will make all of the difference. This is a quote from Esther, and now, if we want to wheel out Esther, this is the time to do it. She was there to stop thousands and thousands of lives being ended. She was there to stop genocide. And now it's the time to focus on justice flowing like a river. I just feel like one day we're going to stand before God, and he's going to say, but you knew 14 million people were going to die. And how did you respond to that? One of the worst things about coming here is I end up saying things that challenge myself. Last time I was here, a couple of months ago, I talked about, you know the poor, you care about the poor, do you know their name? And I went away and go, oh man. So then I had to get involved in some stuff in my church with the homeless people, which I'm really glad I did, but I should just shut up really a lot sooner than I do. But what, my father-in-law was over this Christmas, and he says to me, "Are you bored of Anglican worship yet?" I'm in quite a traditional Anglican church now, which is a new experience for me. And I said, "You know what, I don't care. I've seen how sausages were made for 30 years, so I'm not really that bothered about eating sausages anymore." But I said, the people in the church, they care about justice. They care about those on the margins, and I love these people, and that's why I'm here. And I kind of feel like, and I know Paul was talking to me about Amos 5, and that feels like that's an important time now. I better stop because I've probably talked for too long, and I'm handing over to you now. But anyway, thank you so much for your money. That's what it's going for. You can sign one QR code there. Would get you our prayer email every month. There's some flyers and stuff if you want to take them away to find out more. But again, thank you so much for your gift. It will save lives. How can you pray? Just pray for more generosity for the heads of our countries that are in places like Afghanistan, who are having to cut staff, and yet the need is greater than ever. In places like Sudan, which really doesn't make the news, and yet is horrific civil war where just tens of thousands of lives have been lost. And a lot of the stuff where you don't see it on the news, but it's horrific stuff going on. And we've got teams right in the middle of all of that. So just, praying for them. Thank you.